Hey everyone! In this video you will see the 7 best Tier 8 tank destroyers in World of Tanks. It's important to note that this is a list, not a top, and all the vehicles will be placed not in importance, but in random order. Because there are many really good tank destroyers at Tier 8, and they all have different features, different concepts, and different gameplay. And they are all very situational. So, for example, the American premium tank destroyer TS5 has great frontal armor, which protects even from shells of Tier 10 tanks. On average, its armor is from 260 to 300 mm. Of course, there are weaknesses, in the form of the hull bottom and the hatch, but they are very small and very difficult to hit. The gun has 400 average damage per shot. At the same time, the damage per minute can be improved to 3,600. That's incredibly cool. We can also point out the good aiming time, but not the best accuracy and stabilization. Plus, very poor mobility. And you know, all this is justified, because this tank is designed for close fights. Your task when playing this tank is just driving forward and destroying everyone in your way, but not standing in bushes at the base in any way. For the most part, it's a heavy tank, but without a turret. And you should play it as a heavy tank, despite the fact that this vehicle belongs to tank destroyers class. The same can be said for T-103, which is a Soviet premium tank destroyer. The main difference is the presence of the turret. And it's pretty armored. But, unfortunately, the hull armor leaves much to be desired. After all, even Tier 6 tanks don't care about it. But if you get used to it, and skillfully use only the turret armor, the gameplay of this tank becomes very enjoyable. Plus, T-103 has a very comfortable gun in every respect. Damage per shot is 440, damage per minute can be improved to 3,000. The accuracy is good, aiming time and stabilization are pretty good too. As for the mobility, it's something between normal and not bad, no more. We should also mention the turning speed of both the turret and the hull. It's just awful. So the improved rotation mechanism will not be superfluous. The T-103's gameplay is a bit more difficult than the TS5, and at the same time easier. Because it has no fantastic armor, but it has a turret, and this is its main advantage, along with a comfortable gun. The next is another armored tank destroyer, British Turtle Mk1. This tank is a clear representative of the British assault tank destroyers tree, which, for some reason, is premium. This is strange, as it would fit perfectly in the tech tree, instead of the poor AT-15, but developers decided otherwise. This is another example of a strange phenomenon. Okay, now about the tank itself. It has very good frontal armor. Not as good as the TS5, but still. Plus, unlike the American, the Turtle already has a much larger hull bottom, which is also a vulnerability. Overall, in terms of armor, it's really good. But in terms of the gun it's even better. The damage per shot is 330, this is not very much. But the damage per minute can be improved to as much as 3,700. This is a very good performance, especially taking into account the amazing angles of the gun, both down, right and left. Well, of course, a weighty disadvantage of this tank is poor mobility, it is obvious. In general, it's very interesting and underrated tank, which can definitely give you a lot of positive emotions. The Chinese VZ-120 is another one, the last armored tank in this list. Only in contrast to the previous, it has a very good mobility. So if you like the presence of armor and mobility, this vehicle is definitely for you. Of course, its armor is less strong than that of TS5 and Turtle, and it doesn't even always work against Tier 8 tanks. But it can be used quite effectively if you train. For example, to lift the tank, driving up on some bump. I think you get the idea. As for the gun, it's controversial, but I think it's good. It has good damage per shot, which is 440. And not bad damage per minute, which is about 3,400. But the shooting comfort is terrible. Stabilization and aiming times are very mediocre. Though the accuracy is not bad. That is, it's again a mix of heavy tank and tank destroyer, whose gameplay is all about close and medium distances fights. The only thing you shouldn't play with much aggression. After all, the armor is not as strong as that of the TS5. The next is the Gzr 1008, another British tank destroyer. But unlike its almost brother Turtle 1, it has much weaker armor. To be more exact, it has almost no armor at all. Often this tank is penetrated by absolutely all enemies, except for rare lucky ricochets, on which you shouldn't rely. The mobility of this British tank is very good. The top speed is as much as 60 km per hour, though the engine is not very powerful. But this is not important. The main thing about this tank is its gun. It has a clip for 4 shells of 320 damage. Intra-clip reload is only 2 seconds. Playing this tank you can do real dirt. Just imagine, you can inflict almost 1,300 damage in 6 seconds. That's amazing. Accuracy and aiming are very nice. Stabilization is pretty good too, by tank destroyer standards. The only disadvantages are long clip reload time, and as a result, low damage per minute. But in most cases you won't feel any discomfort in this regard, because 40 seconds for such a crazy gun is not so much. Well, the next one is the new tank for the challenge, the Czech shptk-tvp. Once I got a closer look at this vehicle, and I was very surprised at how overpowered some of its characteristics are. For example, the average penetration of basic shells is as much as 270 mm. Yes, it's a tank destroyer, they all have high penetration. But 270 at tier 8 is just incredible. The second is accuracy and aiming time. They are really nice. The damage per minute is 2,900, and it can be improved to 3,500. This is a very good figure. Although the damage per shot is only 250. This immediately suggests that this tank is not suitable for beginners and inexperienced players. Also suggests its total lack of armor. I think, realize the potential of this tank can only players with 3000 WN8 rate and more, so it's difficult, with all its amazing features. But still, this tank can or could get free and try to play it anyone. And last but not least is the Soviet Su-130PM. To avoid a lot of angry comments, I should say at once that everything that will be said about Su-130 also applies to Scorpion G, and to RHM-BWT, because in fact, they are almost the same tanks. So, first of all, it's worth noting the main minus of the Su-130, lack of armor. Unlike the Gzr, the Soviet tank destroyer can be penetrated even by high explosive shells. But as for the gun part, everything is excellent here. High damage per shot, which is 520, but the damage per minute is not as high as we would like, only 2,900 with all buffs. Accuracy and aiming are very good, but stabilization leaves much to be desired, to say the least. In short, this tank is designed exclusively for passive play. In principle, this tank is not so bad for beginners, but you still need to get used to it, because it's very difficult and uncomfortable to play without armor. It's also worth noting the good mobility. You know, personally I don't like such tanks as Su-130, RHM-BWT, and Scorpion G, but in fact, these classic tank destroyers are very decent vehicles currently, though with poor gameplay, in my opinion. Well, these were the 7 best, and strongest tier 8 tank destroyers. Thank you for watching this video to the end, I hope you found it useful. It's time to say goodbye. Good luck to everyone, and remember, don't play World of Tanks.